All right. What's up, people? I know there's nobody in the stream right now, not quite yet. If you can hear me, let me know during the stream. We're watching the New Zealand Wars, the story of Tainui. Uh, this should be interesting. Definitely should be interesting. Let me get my levels right, get everything right. This is gonna be interesting for sure. And I had to come through and watch this video. I got a lot of comments telling me I should watch this. So I'm definitely gonna want to watch it with you guys live. Shout out to RNZ, and I know they have other videos that I haven't watched yet, and I'm definitely gonna watch them. And we're gonna do this all live. So put your big draws on, man, and come in here and let's learn something about the culture. You know, most of the people that come into the stream there, they don't know much about this culture, including myself, and that's why I said, you know what, let me take this journey with you guys online, live, and just learn about the culture because it's very interesting to me anyway. So, with that being said, let's get to the video. Starting off, look like some haka. And let me tell you this, just starting off, it is amazing graphics on here right now. So shout out to the director, whoever made this. They really put their heart and soul into this one. So I like that. That's definitely a positive.
Brutal, bloody, and calculated. The invasion of Waikato between 1863 and 1864 is the biggest campaign of the New Zealand Wars. It also
All right, so starting off, they letting you know, man, this is wartime, so nothing about war is pretty. No matter where it's at, nothing about war is ever gonna be pretty, right? And that's something we gotta look at as human beings. We have done our fair share of terrible things in the world. You know what I mean? So I'm not here to judge, all right? I'm only here to learn and show my point of view and my opinion when it comes down to these type of things. So, hey.
also marks something much, much greater. The start of a titanic struggle for New Zealand itself over who would own it, who would control it. By July 1863, the stage is set. Conflict between Maori defending what was rightfully theirs and the imperial might of Great Britain was inevitable. The invasion of the Waikato begins right here, on the banks of the Mangatawhiri stream. Kia ora, mihi ngā rangi folks. Join us for the stories of Tainui. The invasion of the Waikato is the most significant of the New Zealand wars, and at the heart of it, this awa, the Waikato River. For the people of the Tainui waka, my people, this is the life force, and they'd do anything to protect it. They'd spill their own blood, because just as this river...
Okay, see, and that's what... See, when I look at things like this, it was just the battle of the old way of thinking against the new way of thinking. Because everybody knows without water or without the sun, nothing can actually live on this earth. You need both of those two components to make anything in this world work, right? And there are many people in the past who lived like that, who lived and understood that those were very, 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 very important, right?
Defines the Waikato people, the battle to control it defines our nation. But the Waikato River, this living taonga, and more than 1 million acres of land, would ultimately be lost to those who hold it sacred, in a struggle signalled long before the actual invasion itself. Pōtatau Te Wherowhero, warrior, strategist, the first anointed Māori king. He is the mana, the living embodiment of the kingitanga. And Sir George Grey, soldier, statesman, dedicated imperialist. He is the colonial governor, the Queen's voice in her furthest colony, and the other central figure in this unfolding drama.
Governor Grey served 2 terms as governor. On his first tour of duty, he actually learnt to speak Māori. He got on with Pōtatau, and they had a wonderful relationship, actually so much so that Governor Grey asked Te Wherowhero.
All right, see, I like this. See, this is a documentary that has everything that I like in it. You know what I mean? It has information galore. And I know there are going to be some things that's probably missed out. And hopefully in the comments, if you're not in here watching it with me right now, hopefully when it's over with, and it's done and over with, and you watch it, there will be some things you can add onto the comments as well. Shout out to everybody that's going to, help me with that. I know that's going to definitely happen. So let's keep it going.
To become the protectorate of Auckland.
Governor Grey, he heard that the northern tribes were going to attack Auckland, so he pleaded for Te Wherowhero to protect Auckland. And so Te Wherowhero, 1849, signed a military protection agreement.
Later on, it really went sour in the discussions between Governor Grey and Te Wherowhero.
E pō, tukuna tō kingitanga ki raro. E kao, e hara I au te kingitanga. Nō ngaiwi katoa te motu. E pō, I will wage war against you for 7 years or more, until you are no more.
And I will resist you for 8 years, for 9 years or more. You see, we will not go away.
E pō, I have cows with extensive progeny. When I release my cows onto your lands, they will drink up your waterways until they are all dried up. Your springs, your rivers, your lakes, your streams.
That may be so, if it's merely rain, formed in the clouds, soon to fall to the ground, only to be dried up by the sun. Then maybe your cows can drink all our waterways. But my people come from a well deep in the ground. We will not be dried up.
Governor Grey was clearly stating his primary objective. And in our eyes, his primary objective was to annihilate, to acquire complete sovereignty under the British rule.
Old man, what will you eat?
We will eat mamaku, para. We will be sustained by the fruits of our forest.
And when that food is gone, what will you eat then?
You. I will eat you.
Okay, I don't know this. I don't know. I'm. This is a question. All right. I don't know if Maori people are cannibalists. Are they cannibalists? I don't think they're cannibalistic. I'm not gonna go that far. I haven't read anywhere about Maori people being cannibalists. But I know an act of um, the word I'm looking for. When you're starving and there's nothing else to leave, I mean, else to eat. I know at the ending of the day, there has been stories of people, eating other people. So it's always an option.
Well, Gray, by the time he arrives in New Zealand for a second governorship, has recently separated from his wife. He's basically an opium addict, and he
So he was an opium addict, a divorcee, and had a lot of time on his hands. Oh boy, that's never a good mix.
finds that the old tricks that he employed in the 1840s no longer work, and he can't get away with flattery and that kind of thing anymore. The context has changed dramatically. In the 1840s, he didn't have a Māori King movement that he was required to deal with. And Gray was not prepared to engage with the kingitanga in a way that treated them as treaty partners.
Pōtatau Te Wherowhero dies in 1860, 3 years before the invasion. He is succeeded by his son, Kingi Tāwhiao. But by now, the relationship between Crown and kingitanga has soured.
Tāwhiao was a very visionary guy. He spent a lot of time in the wairua. The people used to call him the Prophet King, Te Kingi Poropitsi. He was baptized into 3 separate churches, into the Anglican Church, the Catholic Church, and the Methodist Church. When I asked my Uncle Kapua why, he just said, it's $1 each way into how to get into heaven, really. So, but then he embraced all denominations, all peoples, really.
By the close of 1861, there's an uneasy truce. War in Taranaki that year ends inconclusively. But the settlers, confined as they are to the margins of the colony, want more. Much more.
They're not powerful enough to do anything about that because they're hugely outnumbered for a long time. The Victorian racial hierarchy has them at the apex, and they travel here, the other side of the world, and they find that Māori are basically in charge. They dominate the economy, they're independent, they own incredibly valuable lands in the Waikato and elsewhere that many settlers resent the fact that they can't get their hands on.
Sorry. This is what I'm talking about. Greed. Somebody else wants something. You're telling them, nah, I can't. I refuse to, because if I turn my back on what I'm in charge of, everybody else is going to be mad at me, or they're going to suffer. And it's the same thing. I don't see that working out for anybody. If 2 sides are actually being told the same thing, one feels like they have to do what they have to do to get that, and the other person is like, I have to do what I have to do to protect that. There's no way that something as small as a treaty is going to work until somebody of either side is satisfied. And majority of the time, what we see in culture and in history and in war, that's what's taking place. Devastation has to begin in the eyes of people who are watching it. The people who are actually doing it, they're doing it for a reason. They have a reason behind whatever they're doing. But the people who are just watching it, reading it, learning about it, it's complete devastation.
The settlers and their governor have no intention of sharing power with a Māori king. They want to crush what the fledgling British colony sees as a rebellion. Tawhiol's mana means little to Grey, but Tawhiol, the second Māori king, sees the kingitanga as a relationship of equals rather than a threat to the crown.
Nōku nei whenua. Nōku tēnei awa. Ki te whakawhiti koe I te mga tāwhiri, ka pakanga tāu.
Tawhiol felt betrayed by Governor Grey, given that his father protected Tāmaki Makaureo.
The call goes out for soldiers from across the British Empire. They arrive from England, Ireland, India and Australia in massive numbers. Governor Grey needs the military know-how to get the job done. He brings in Lieutenant General Duncan Cameron, old Etonian and hero of the Crimean campaign. The first task is building a supply line.
See, when it comes down to it, man, it's like we live like, always at a calm, peaceful state of mind, because we're comfortable. And that's just not how life really is. Every day, if you just literally go outside and just look in the plants, just look with like little animals, like little insects and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. They're fending for their lives every single day. And trust me, they are not comfortable at all. I don't know if many people know the difference between being comfortable, and being greedy. How much does it take for someone to be content? And that's a difficult answer. Right now I see all of this and this so many people had to like fold, bro, just for this to take place. And I see that today as well, like with like big businesses and then little businesses and stuff like that. It's crazy. Dirty game.
Travelling down Great South Road, and thousands of New Zealanders would be doing this every single day. And I'm guessing not many would realise its significance. And that's that this stretch of road changed the course of New Zealand's history.
Exactly my point. Yo, I don't understand. I don't know if people understand this though, bro. Like, but where you walk, like you just walk on the street. It may just look like it may just look like a regular piece of land to you, like a regular road, but you don't know how many dead bodies are under that. You don't know how much blood was soaked into that soil. You don't know how much tears, really is in that soil that's under that concrete. That's literally still there to this day from either war or from some kind of tyranny that took place in that area, man. Like I said, we just living comfortably. But when you really get down and you think about what you really see, is it really enough?
The military road relentlessly cuts through bush and hillsides, finally reaching the Mangatawhiri stream just south of the Bombay Hills by March 1863. Grey's Great South Road is now a spear pointed at the very heart of Waikato.
He also massively increases the number of British troops in New Zealand. In total, there were about 18,000 troops on the Crown side involved in the invasion of Waikato. So you've got a professional standing army belonging to the world's great superpower, which Britain was in the 1860s, unquestionably the world's leading superpower, up against a civilian population that doesn't have a standing army, it doesn't have a supply line. So Kingitanga fighters not only have to defend themselves, but they also have to feed themselves.
They begin to set up camp, and the threatening images in your mind, if you can visualize, fires burning and now people wondering what's going on, what's happening here. And all these soldiers are all positioned, ready to go into battle. Our people were overwhelmed. The images of fires, people, tents going up, it would have put the fear of not only God into them, but the fact of the matter is that they had to try their best to prepare themselves for the worst to come yet.
The air is electric over the colony. War is coming. But war needs justification, and Gray completes that by issuing 2 impossible ultimatums to Waikato Māori. The first to the villagers just down here on the south banks of the Manukau Harbour.
They sent their pānui out to our people in South Auckland. I'm sure I can recite part of that. But the pānui says, to the natives who reside in the Manukau district in the Waikato frontier, you are hereby required immediately to take your oath of allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, and to give up your arms to an officer appointed by the government for that purpose. Natives that comply with this order will be protected. However, natives who refuse are hereby warned to leave the district aforementioned and retire beyond Waikato past the Mangatawhiri River, or you will be ejected.
The invasion.
Now, you hear that, right? That's basically that was basically, hey, look, either you're with us or you're against us, or you're gonna lay down or you're gonna stay down. And what's a king to do actually in that situation against somebody that's, threatening your family, your culture, everything that you stand for? What is somebody to do? Are they supposed to run and give up, or are they going to protect what they've been inherited? It's a difficult situation. And then now, not only that, you have somebody telling you, look, we are stronger than you. If you come with us, we'll protect you. So you have you have this situation where you have people now that can actually, who knows where you've been, knows your area, who would actually take that bargain because of fear, and they would literally tell how you operate to the next to the people, the same people who threaten to take away everything that you've ever known your whole life. That's difficult. And it's, this is just one example of war. It's just one example. And it's difficult to say that. I'm pretty sure it'll be anytime soon that war isn't needed. I'm pretty sure we're on the verge of another war somewhere, but it's difficult. Most of these old cultures, that used to that knew how to survive off of just a little bit of land, a little bit of area. they knew how to survive with where they were, are almost gone. If you're not in a big old community, you know what I mean, that that somebody can get their food to you or something like that, where you don't have to, you're not comfortable. You have to go out and actually work and do something under your wants, not in the sense of paying taxes or doing something of that manner. In some way, they're almost gone. You probably name like, they're probably like two handfuls maybe. I mean, like, it's that bad.
Waikato was a predetermined war of conquest and invasion on the Crown's part. That's absolutely clear. Governor Grey attempted to justify the unjustifiable, really, through assembling a dodgy dossier of evidence that supposedly incriminated Tainui, but in fact did no such thing.
Dawn, July 12, 1863, and Tainui's worst fears unfold. Hundreds of Imperial troops cross the Mangatawhiri River. This is the dividing line, the frontier between colonial Auckland and the sovereign Māori lands of Waikato.
See, that's what it all came down to. Sovereignty. You know what I'm saying? Sovereignty. A lot of people don't know what that is. They don't know what living a sovereign life is. Living under your own rule. It's difficult.
When they crossed the Rārangi Aukati, that's what they call it, we have a tikanga called Pike Hawani. And Pike Hawani is a broken truce. So he did it deliberately, broke that line, and declared war.
The British make very, very slow progress south, and their supply lines and troops marching down the Great South Road are subject to frequent attacks. It's not really until November that the British start to make significant progress south.
Significant progress also demands control of the river. The Waikato was the State Highway 1 of its time. Whoever controlled the river controlled the war. And in 1863,
That's a big river. And I already know the British. I think the British, were they one of the first people to have a navy? If I'm not mistaken.
These are the game changers. Steam-powered Ironsides with awesome onboard firepower, capable of quickly delivering troops to the front line.
What they hadn't encountered was the gunboats on the river before. So they tried to fell trees in the river to try and stop it, but it was too little and not enough to be able to stop the boats. And then the cannons firing from the river, as well as the troops coming on the land, had never been encountered in the Waikato before.
How did the gunboat change the dynamic of war?
Well, massively. I mean, you had these hugely terrifying vessels that could be unleashed on Māori communities alongside the Waikato River, and with huge firepower, including gun turrets like this that held Armstrong guns that could cause immense damage. It would have been terrifying.
And in the crosshairs is the fortress of Rangiriri. Rangiriri is the trophy they so desperately want, the last battle par between Imperial troops and the conquest of the Waikato. Or so they think.
The architect of the past site is Te Ahorangi Te Wharepu, no Ngāti Mahuta. He was present at Rua Pika Pika. And we understand that some of the concepts from Rua Pika Pika was brought down from there and incorporated and enhanced here at Rangiriri.
started from the Waikato, and then it went all the way into Kopuera, and then into Lake Waikare. It encompassed almost the whole of the township of where Rangiriri stands now, or on the crest of the hill anyway. And they did it so that they could move easily around. So there wasn't just one sort of snake-like trench, there were a number.
It's not a conventional rectangular type pa, it's a long trench that's nearly 1 kilometre long. Part of the brilliance of the design was that it looked underwhelming from a distance, and the British didn't really realise that the skill and the intricacy that had gone into the design of that pa.
When Tawhia was there at Rangiriri, he instructed our people not to fight, actually to go inland, go into the forests. This is what te wharepu says. Ki te rere te toto, me rere I runga I tō mātou whenua ake. If blood is to be shed, let it be shed on our own land. Kāre mātou e whakai. We disagree with you, King. We will remain here, we will fight. Ka wehe te kingi, ka noho mai te iwi ki kona.
The British firepower is terrifying. From the river, Ironsides pound the 500 defenders in the pa.
The Pioneer and other gunboats had come down. They were shelling from the river. You were getting fire from the cannons on the land. And so it was a totally brand new experience. But they had heard about cannon fire, and that's why the trench warfare was established. And they tried to do them so that it absorbed a whole lot of the shock. The women and children will be in parts of it more lower down, whereas the men would be up higher. And the women and children's job was to put the powder in the shot into the musket, pass it up, shoot, throw it down again, so it was a continuous.
Yo, bro, so you mean to tell me, bro, even in their culture, they literally had the women and the children also in the fight as well with them before it was even legal? It's crazy.
The British fear the defenders will slip the net if an attack isn't mounted immediately. So, by late afternoon, they launch a full frontal assault. But as they charge through the bracken and onto the pa itself, they begin to realise just how formidable it actually is. The defenders have lured their vastly better equipped foes into a trap.
It wasn't until troops stumbled into the Ford trenches, and they were much deeper than they are today. It wasn't until then that they finally realised what they were in for. It was a shooting gallery.
The trenches at Rangiriri are 4 metres deep, and when the British attempt to scale those on the 20th of November 1863, they find that their ladders aren't long enough.
Well, that's not good, eh? So, you get there, you get stabbed with a bayonet or shot with a musket, and so they had to go back and they had to make extensions to their ladders so that they could get all the way up to the top of the parapet.
The British make repeated attempts to storm that, and they suffer heavy casualties.
It's a desperate situation. Casualties are piling up as multiple assaults on the path fail. The defenders hold out till nightfall, but they know they can't hold out much longer. They're almost surrounded. The outcome is inevitable. Those who can escape, those who can't, are taken prisoner of war and forced marched to Auckland, where they're jailed on a barge on the Waitemata harbour. In the confusion, women and children make a run for it, down the long eastern escape route and through the swamp, hopelessly trying to escape capture. But the troops have the higher ground.
And if you got the higher ground,
Whilst they were trying to still negotiate and things, they asked the women and the children to escape to the little wakas out on the lake.
They began to run because they were being shot at.
They were struggling, carrying babies and trying to wade through water and getting caught in weeds. The government troops was on top of the hills, just taking pot shots at them from a downward angle.
They were literally slaughtered. All I can see is the woman dying, injured, wounded. All I can see is children dying, falling, screaming out to their mother and father, and falling into the lake. They named the lake Ko Puera, those who were shot.
that's crazy.
Our people were in prison. Our people were killed. But you can never forget what happened there.
The historic cemetery at Rangiriri tells much about the way we commemorate history. The headstones recognise the colonial and imperial casualties, which were high, 130, including more than 40 officers and men killed.
These are the graves of men of the British Army and also the Navy who died in action at Rangiriri on the 20th of November 1863.
By contrast, just a short walk away is an equally significant but easily overlooked resting place.
This is the unmarked grave of Māori who were captured at the Battle of Rangiriri and subsequently died of their wounds. Even in death, there seems to be a disparity in the way that people are remembered and commemorated.
With Rangiriri lost, the kingitanga sues for peace. Grey warns that he'll only talk terms with Tawhiao if he abandons his capital at Ngārua Wāhia. Tawhiao obliges. The Union Jack is raised, but Grey hasn't gone to war to teach the kingitanga a lesson. He's out to destroy it. Māori, though, aren't about to give up. They build what will be the greatest defensive line established by either side in the New Zealand Wars. A 10-kilometre-long defensive arc of trenches, tunnels, bunkers and redoubts centred at Pāterangi, stretching from Te Awamutu to the Waipa River in the upper Waikato.
Pāterangi was prepared for this battle, this fight. Well, history tells us that it was so well prepared that General Cameron and his officers
found that they would only take that with serious loss, if they could take it at all. So they decided to bypass Pātirangi and come to what they saw as the food bowl of Pātirangi, rangi awhia.
Before the war, Rangiawhia was the granary of New Zealand in some ways. It was renowned for the wheat that was grown there and all kinds of produce. Rangiawhia is at the heart of this thriving Māori economy.
Rangiawhia was actually the food bowl for Auckland. Rangiawhia was feeding the troops before they came through. So there were thousands of people living here, cultivating the fields, making a good living from the space. It wasn't just a village, it was a major township.
Rangiawhia is not only a thriving agricultural centre, but for more than 20 years, Māori and Pākehā intermingle here, living together, worshipping together. St Paul's Chapel is the last link with the past. Today it stands sentinel over rolling, prosperous dairy country. But in February 1864, it bears witness to an atrocity that echoes to this very day. At the time, Māori living here are led to believe it's a safe haven for non-combatants, decreed by the Bishop of New Zealand himself.
The general was surprised and somewhat dismayed that children and women were in the firing line. And so with Bishop Salmon, they brokered an agreement that Rangiawhia was set aside as a place for non-combatants to be safe. Well, that was the expectation.
Late on the evening of the 20th of March, 1864, Cameron orders his troops to march in single file silently around the Pātarangi defences, so that they sneak around it in the middle of the night with the aid of some Māori guides.
As I said before,
the invading force arrives at Rangiawhia before dawn on the Sunday the 21st of February, and there's panic and terror amongst the people there who run for their lives.
People were ordered to come out of the house. We have a kōrero about an old man coming wrapped in his blanket and being shot summarily. One of our kuia had retired with some of our mokopunas. The old lady had a gun in the house for shooting, for hunting, for those kinds of purposes. So she used it to defend herself. And then the soldier kicked the door down and shot him. We have this story from our nanny Mamai. As a 10-year-old child, she was playing down by the creek, and then they heard shots, and her mother told her to take her younger siblings into the bush and hide until whatever was happening stopped. Her name at that time was Wikitoria. So she did that, and unfortunately, it didn't stop. So she escaped with her siblings to Oturuhanga, and there when the old people there heard her story of this pahuatanga and heard her talk about hearing her mother being raped, her old people being shot, and children also losing their lives. They changed her name and called her Te Mamai, which means the pain, the sorrow.
Because the fighting force is away holding the line at Pāterangi, only old men, women and children are left to defend the village. They make for easy prey. Looting, burning, murder. No one is safe. Some try sheltering in a nearby Catholic church, but soon soldiers' bullets perforate the flimsy walls. And at another whare of worship, one of the most shameful events of the New Zealand Wars is about to take place.
People took sanctuary in that church when the attack took place and refused to come out. The soldiers ordered the people out. And a soldier had written in his diary that he saw a young child, around about 10 years old, who we understand his name was Arama, running out of the whare, flailing his arms, and our stories say that he was shot dead. Were they acting under orders, or were they such an undisciplined mob that they just did what they liked? I choose to believe that they were under orders, that they were told to round everybody up, get these natives out, expel them by whatever means necessary, and if it means killing them, well, the land is ours for the taking. Word had already gotten through that you come out, you're going to get killed. Don't come out. So they stayed in there, and the soldiery set light to that church. You can understand how this still affects us today.
After Rangiaowhia, after the loss of their industrial heartland, there's nowhere to go. Those who can trudge off into exile in Tainui, neighbouring Maniapoto. Others remain committed to the fight, and ahead lies Ōrākau, the final stand of the war for Waikato.
A whole number of tūwharetoa and whakanui had come up to support at Ōrākau. And then Tūhoe had come over and Kahungunu. By the time those other iwi had come, they were tired and they were weary, and they were still digging their trenches by the time the militia came.
And they really wanted to engage directly with the troops. They didn't want to take their weapons back all the way to Tūhoe without being fired. So the emotions were quite strong that an engagement should be taken very soon. Their decision and idea was to do so at Ōrākau.
Ōrākau in Ngāti Maniapoto is home to the senior fighting commander Rewe Manga Maniapoto.
Manga's view was totally opposite. Oraka was never ever a part of any battle plan or any defensive strategy at all. The tactical situation on the ground, the way the ground falls, its terrain, it opens itself up to being surrounded quite easily. Coupled with that, they hadn't been able to secure sufficient ammunition, absolutely insufficient water. The only food they had was potatoes and kumara, pumpkins. So unfortunately, all of these lemons came into effect, where they all came together to create a disastrous tactical situation for the commander to be in.
To make matters worse, the pa is unfinished. They are once again greatly outnumbered, and a third of them are women and children.
Just like everywhere else, it's every civilization. There's just not enough men going around.
We're often asked, how come there were children in the bar? And we have this family story again of our tupuna Ripeka with her baby in swaddling, not even a toddler, taking her baby into the bar. And we're asked, how come? And we say, Rangiaofia was the example. It was supposed to be safe. Where's safe for my baby? The only safe place for my baby is in my arms.
The battle rages over 3 harrowing days, but strike after strike is repulsed. The defenders are determined to fight on, despite overwhelming odds, and for both sides, the casualties begin to mount. It's only a matter of time before the British troops break through. Engineers have sapped their way right up to their outer trenches. Still, the defenders fight on, but they're surrounded, out of ammunition, food and water. They're out of everything except courage. A message is sent to the pa: save your women and children. But there's no faith the British will keep their word. Not anymore.
The influences that had happened at Kopuera and Rangiaofia meant that they didn't trust the word of the enemy.
The battle was almost at the end. They'd been fighting already for a number of days. So Cameron sent out his emissary to go and treat for surrender.
What is said next will be remembered as one of the most iconic quotes in New Zealand history, coming from Rewi Maniapoto, a rallying cry for generations of Māori to come.
E hoa! E kore e mau te rongo! Ka whawhai tonu mātou, mō ake! Mō ake! Ake! Whātoi mano kururau! Hono te kaumau pātatau! Aia te marama! O te whiti mai te o pataua! O te kāwana te paka!
It symbolized the determination, not only his, but of Māori people. It's a battle cry to ensure that our grandchildren will no longer have to contend with being slaves, constitutional slaves, legislative slaves of a regime that is not of our making, that does not represent who we are, that does not articulate our dreams and aspirations into the future, and that is a struggle for our freedom, and it's an ongoing struggle.
And the men wouldn't fight alone. A young noble woman, Ahumai Te Pairata, steps onto the battlefield.
Ki te mate ngā tāne, me mate hoki ngā wahine, me ngā tamariki.
Ai ora kau te mai o te riri, e pepe ate iai te kore.
Ki te mate ngā tāne, me mate hoki ngā wahine, me ngā tamariki.
Kawa mai tōnu mātou. Hoke, hoke, hoke.
But Ahumai Te Pairata, who so defiantly warned that if the men die, so would the women and children, recognises that there's no chance, and she escapes with some 300 others. But in the dash for freedom, she is shot 4 times and seriously wounded. And worse is yet to come. For the next 5 hours, hundreds of fleeing Māori are hunted down in streams, valleys and caves around Ōrākau by rampaging colonial and imperial horsemen. It's estimated some 200 Māori died that day.
As I walk down these slopes, I think of the men, the women and the children hacked down so brutally. He mamai.
This is the defining conflict in New Zealand history, in my view, far more so than World War I and World War II. For so long, Gallipoli was kind of a focus, and for Pākehā, a sort of foundational narrative for the nation, but really the invasion of Waikato in July 1863 is a decisive moment in New Zealand history. We live with the consequences of it today in so many ways.
I'm well taught by my elders. Utua te kino ki te pai. Turn the other cheek. So I take heart that I'm able, with my cohort, my children, my grandchildren, to ensure that these stories live on. And that at some time, there'll be a reconciliation.
Sounds kind
The
of familiar,
story
doesn't
of
it?
the war on Waikato. It might end here at Ōrākau. But for me, as Ngāti Maniapoto, it's far from over. We're still tenants on our own lands. The poverty divide between those who fought here remains unresolved. And we as New Zealanders, all of us, we live with the consequences of that to this very day.
So they got compensation for this as well, huh? Still not enough. $12 billion. Pride. So this was awesome. This was amazing. I learned a lot with this info. And when I hear things like this and when I see things like this, it's like, how many times in history do we honestly have to see this take place to realize what we're up against, what some people may be up against. You know, it's sometimes it's just one person's pride that you have to battle against, really, for somebody, for a lot of people to pass away, and a lot of bad things to happen. They want something that they think they're gonna get, and it's just nowhere near that. Man, this is why I don't jump to perspectives so quick. It's just because I have to know. Right now I'm not jumping to a perspective either. You know, I'm just looking at it like, history has a way of really showing its evil fangs. It really does. And I just hope that, even though, you guys didn't come in here and watch this right now, which is totally fine. I will be doing another one very soon. And I continue to say, man, you have to realize a lot of things. Be humble. You know what I mean? And protect yourself. It's so much things that I could say, man, and there's nothing really that really can be said to lighten the blow of what we just watched. Really, it has to be known. You just have to protect yourself because life is not getting easier. Nowhere. Somewhere around the world right now, somebody's going through some bull crap like this. And we just don't know about it. Oh, man. All right, well, that's the ending of that, man. And you know what? I'm out of here. I appreciate y'all watching the video if you get to this part, which is the ending. And again, in the comments, let me know what you thought, what you think about what you saw here. I know many people who asked me to watch this, they already have their opinion, and I want to know that as well in the comments, all right?